Hello and thanks for watching this Cloud9 ERP solution video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to talk about the basics of manufacturing. How to get an item together so that you can produce it into a finished good. So in manufacturing, we have many different methods to produce an item. What we're talking about is a raw material, some piece of item that we're going to take and make it into something finished. And typically the challenge there is with systems that don't have manufacturing or any ability to do this, is you want to take multiple quantities of different items and produce a single finished good. So for example, let's say I am building a table. I need one piece of wood and maybe 4 legs, and maybe I need, 4 brackets and 4 screws. To put all that together, I have to deduct all those quantities of all the raw materials and come out with a finished good, a finished table that I can then sell. So the process involved in that, of course, is all the materials that cost up to making that table and any given labor. Now, of course, in Acumatica, we have the ability to do kit assembly, and that's a very simple approach to doing it. But today we're going to talk about our manufacturing edition, and we're going to talk about creating a raw material item, creating a finished good item, creating a bill of material, that's our recipe for making this item, and then we're going to sell it and actually produce it. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to inventory and we'll go to stock items. And I'm not going to create the whole item. I am going to show you what I created and some of the important configuration areas that you need to check and make sure they're set up. Otherwise, it won't function correctly. So in this scenario, we have a stone manufacturer. The manufacturer buys slabs of stone and makes thin stone, the kind of stone that you put on a house, for example. Very thin. But they take that big amount of stone and they break it down, and they have a saw that cuts it into thin stone. So one of the challenges there is they buy in tons and they sell in square feet. So the first part is we go to our raw material. We'll create an item here. And of course, we'll give it an inventory ID. We'll give it a description. We'll pick an item class. Keep in mind, your item class does a lot of the legwork for you in Acumatica. It pulls in a lot of the defaults that are important to you, such as, in this case, the fact that, of course, it's a stock item, but the fact that it's a component, that's important to note. All of the valuation and tax settings and the GL posting settings and all that stuff will come in. It does bring in the base unit of measure and all that stuff. Of course, we change that. And then additionally, you can go in and there could be some replenishment, things like that. We're not going to talk about any of that today, but all of those settings come in from your item class as a default. So we have our item class. It's a component part. The valuation method, all of that stuff, we're going to, when we make it, we're going to put it into our default warehouse. The base unit of measure is ton, and the sales unit is ton, and the purchase unit is ton as well. So we do purchase this, but we don't necessarily sell it. We finish it before we sell it. So you'll notice there's no conversion here. It's not really necessary because we don't convert this directly. We use our production order to do that for us. So if we go into our price, we can put a price on this. This is the last cost we paid for it. If we go to manufacturing, over here we have a default bill of material planning and configuration. We don't need these because they're raw materials. We're not manufacturing this item. We're taking this item to use to manufacture something else. So we put that in there. And that's pretty much it for the raw material for now. We're good. Now the next thing we want to do is configure our thin stone. So once again, that is a finished good, not a component. And our sales and purchase unit are square foot. That's how we sell it to customers. We have a price per square foot here. And under manufacturing, we do have a default bill of material. We'll take a look at that in a second. Additionally, you can check off this or make to order item. So this allows you to say that when you put it on a sales order, a manufacturing production order can automatically get created and directly related to that sales order. There'll be a link between them. So you can do that, you can check that off, and then the system will automatically check it in the sales order. That's an option. But now back to our bill of material, let's take a look at that. We have our raw material, that's the slab, and we have our thin stone. So let's look at our bill of material. The bill of material is a recipe for producing this finished good item. Finished good item being the thin stone. So when we make this item, we make it in the wholesale warehouse. You can see that there. So once it's created, we're going to inventory receipts, create an inventory receipt transaction automatically in the background into that warehouse. The top area here is your operational steps for producing this item. Now, this particular item to make it requires a couple of steps. We've simplified it here, but essentially we're just showing the cutting step, but there's actually one other step there. But the idea here is that in order to produce 75 of these units, it'll take us 1 hour. So what does that mean? Well, 75 is 75 square feet. Remember, that was our unit of measure. So every hour we can produce 75 square feet. That's what we put here. We've also added an hour of machine time so we can track the machine time, the machine that we're using. The machine itself is part of our work center. Additionally, there's a checkbox here for backflush. The concept of backflush is that we automatically use our labor or our materials. We don't physically clock in and clock out for our labor, and we don't physically attach materials to each production order. We assume these numbers, and the system will backflush that in. It's a very simple way of producing, but it's also very beneficial to many companies that don't want to look at every single detail of their process or track every single detail of their process in terms of time and materials. The work center is our basis for capacity. So our standard cost is $75 per unit. And our crew size is the basis right here. And if we go over to our shifts, you can see we have a crew of essentially 1 here. And you can go in here, you can change your labor rates, you can change your calendar shift and how long that shift is. Later, if you get more advanced, you can optimize your shifts or to get to the production you need to fulfill the quantities you have outstanding. And of course, you can track overhead. You can use a percentage here of overhead and your machine costs. There's accounts here for that. And when you're looking at the work center, without bringing it up from a bill of material, when you're looking at the work center, you can see all the different bill of materials or BOMs that are using this work center. This is beneficial so that you can know how making a change here can impact all these different production items. And that's what we're doing here. We're using this field stone slab. So in order to produce 75 units, this is the amount of tons we require. Keep in mind, there's 4 decimal places here. That's a change you can make in the company profile in Acumatica. Otherwise, the default is 2 decimal places. I needed 4. So it's going to cost us $60. Our planned cost is here based on what we're trying to produce. And additionally, in the bill of material, you can actually calculate your bill of material cost. So for example, if you said, all right, well, I need to make 1,000 square feet, and I click OK here, Acumatica will tell you what your labor and materials will essentially be. So now we have our bill of material, our recipe. It's not on hold. We took it off hold. It's currently active. Make sure you attend to that. And if we go to production orders, and we do a brand new one, we scroll down, we tell it how many square feet we're going to create. Maybe we're creating 1,560 square feet. We're going to start it right now. The References tab gives you the ability to link it to a customer or an order. We're not going to do that right now. We don't need to. But had we created this production order from a sales order, then of course you'd have a linked order here. And the source or the recipe is coming from the bill of material. However, you have other options here. You have an estimate or configuration. These are advanced topics that we'll cover later in another video. So now if I save this and I release the order, in releasing the order, I'm essentially releasing it to the shop floor so they can get started on it. So status released means it's ready to go, start working on it. So there's a few options here. The first one is if you look at the production detail, it actually gives you the information about how to make this. Remember, the person who's creating the bill of material is not the same person that is on the shop floor creating this. So while the bill of material is your template, your recipe, this is actually how we're making it. And when it's not in the release status, you can make changes for each production order if you need to. But we have options here. If we take a look at our, for example, critical material, Acumatica will tell you if you need anything, any items that you might need in order to get this job done. I'm clicking show all items, but quantity remaining and quantity on hand, we have plenty of quantity for what we need. So that's not necessary in order to do what we need to do. Notice it's telling us it's 22 tons is what we need. But again, we have it available. Having said that, if you did need materials, you could check off the items that you need and either purchase them, manufacture them, or transfer them from other warehouses. So you can do all that right from this screen. And manufacture, the option there is that perhaps in order to get this stone slab, maybe I'm manufacturing it in a different bill of material, a different type of production order to get this raw material. In many cases, you may produce your own component items out of other raw materials. So using raw materials, you'll produce components. Those components will later be needed for your total finished good, which is why we have the manufacture button here. But if we go back to production order details, you can see what's required to do here. And if we go back to our production order, click the pencil, under the maintenance screen, again, there's a maintenance and a detail screen we just left. You have all your options here. So plan order brings it back to the ability to change it. Of course, we can cancel the order if we need to. We talked about replenishment, the ability to create purchase orders or production orders if they're out there. I'm skipping over creating a move transaction. We'll do that in a second. Production detail we went to, critical material we went to. And you have a number of inquiry screens to learn about where your raw materials are and your allocation details. We give you that. Any transactions that you produced, any attributes, custom attributes, if there's a schedule involved. We're not getting in that today. But here's our production ticket. So our production ticket is often referred to as a traveler. And that traveler can be printed out and handed to your production worker so they know what to do. Now you notice this is barcoded. That works with our automated barcode reading system where a worker can scan what they're working on, what work center they're tied to, what their badge number is, so you can get their labor, what production number they're working on and the item. And so now you'll have complete barcode scanning to move this item around and update its status and progress throughout the production order. So while we can always attach materials and things like that to this production order, because we backflush everything, we can come over here and create our move transaction. So if I move over a little bit, just to show what we're doing here, we only have one operational ID, as you know. So Acumatica is creating a move transaction with that one operational ID. But if you have different steps, then you can proceed further, or you can do each step just to show your progress Again, as a production worker, you can tell the system how far along you are and what your quantities are throughout the progress of this production order. So to finish the entire quantity and all the steps involved, I can use the last operational ID, again there's only one, and the quantity, the total quantity that I'm looking for, 1560, which is on my production order maintenance. And I can take off the hold and release it. Now there's preferences too for producing more or less. You can give yourself options based on the order type here. So there's preferences in the order type. But in this case, I'm going to produce everything I need. I'm going to hit release here. And now that I created my move transaction, if I close this, I'm back in my production order maintenance. If I go over to my events tab, the events tab tells you everything that's happening. Earlier, you know that we released the production order, and there's the time, date, stamp, and who did it was admin. I printed a report. I did my move transaction, which in turn did my material and cost transaction. And of course, because I did the full quantity in my move transaction, Acumatica has shown this as completed. So, and you see it's still released here, but if I refresh, you see it's completed and all my menu items have changed. If you need to get into any of these transactions, you can click on them just to see, for example, the detail. So the material transaction took those 22.8 and so tons and attached it to the production order with all the costs. This is the total cost. You can get into all of that. And then my labor cost is here as well. We backflush that as well. So our operational steps, our work center, had all that labor in it. And then finally our move transaction, but we saw that already. The last step in this is you have the ability to close the order. So this is your final step in closing the order and getting it 100% done. Click on that. You can see Acumatica brings us to our close order screen. It's automatically checking the one we're in. And if we click process, that'll finalize it. Now, if we go into Thinstone, we just click on that item. That brings up the inventory item profile. And one of our previous videos, not too long ago, we have these new side panels that show us what's going on, item pricing for sales, for vendors, inventory summary, how much do I have in what areas. But if I go to inventory transaction history, and I move this over a little bit, what you can see here is a complete history of this item. Right from the time that it was created, over here on the 9th, had 0 quantity, but quantity in was 102. And if you need to see more details, you can click on that particular document number. It'll open it up. So you can see that right here. If we make it maximized, 102 quantity, square feet. And if we go to our manufacturing, notice there's a batch number. Typically an inventory receipt is for purchase orders where you receive them. But in this case, this is a production transaction. And our manufacturing system uses that inventory receipt to put those items into stock, which is what we see here when we click on inventory transaction history. We could see the transaction we just did, which is the 1,560 quantity in. So we had 1,240, we're adding 1,560 to it, and now we have 2,800, and our unit cost is now $1.88. So that's it. That's a quick production order. Of course, you can create this through a sales order. There's a checkbox in the sales order line that says mark for production. If you do that, it can automatically create the production order for you. And then once it's done, it can communicate to the sales order and let that sales order know that it can ship out. Keep in mind that if you do create a production order from a sales order, that sales order cannot ship out even if you have stock, until your production order that is linked has been completed. So just keep that in mind in case you have an order that won't ship because the system says there's no items to ship. Well, that's because it may be linked to a production order that's not completed. Same thing holds true with sales orders that are linked to purchase orders. If the purchase order didn't come in yet, you're not going to be able to ship that sales order unless you decouple that link between the PO and the sales order. But that's it. That's manufacturing 101, taking some components or raw materials and making a single item, a finished good out of it. If you have any questions about this or anything else Acumatica, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you liked the video, please click the like button down at the corner of YouTube. And thanks again for watching.